where I was going with this initially before I unloaded, and I'm sorry you had to get any of that, Ian.
No, I enjoyed it. I'm just saying,
But
like we need like a whole show to talk TCM 2022.
right, where I was going with it is that it is great that we have so many people and the internet is so interested in the horror genre now that it wasn't 10 years ago. We've gone from people saying, "Oh, you watch slasher films," to "What are you complaining about? It's just a slasher film. It is fun." In the span of 10 years, which I didn't think would ever happen again. So that is what I find fascinating about this whole conversation. My personal opinions didn't mean unload to my patrons, who, if you catch the pre-show, folks, if you sign up for the Patreon, you can hear me get triggered. Haven't been triggered like that for a little while. But it is great that horror is forefront. People are interested in it. I chuckle at the conversations of, "Oh, it's just a slasher film." I'm like, well, original TCM wasn't really a slasher film, but that's a whole other debate. And you're right, it's a whole show we could do, and who knows, maybe we'll do someday when I can not be me. But
well, but you know, this does kind of circle back to something we started talking about on the Patreon show, which was the Oscars, and we were kind of dipping into how a lot of the big contenders now are on, like Power of the Dog is on Netflix, just like TCM 2022. I think one of the reasons we're seeing such a huge debate about the new Texas Chainsaw is because it's on Netflix.
Right.
It's not something like, oh, some people went out and saw it in the theater. No, there are people who just like woke up or they stayed up till midnight on Friday or whatever, and they watched it, and then everybody's off to the races. They're just talking about it. So that's where it's kind of a, you know, with the genre films, especially if there's one that people pick up on and they love or hate, and then the Discord starts flying. You don't have to wait like a week to say, okay, who's seen it by now? You can start talking about everybody's seen it.
Yeah. So yeah, that's where I was going to, is that the streaming, it's great. It's done well for the horror genre. I'm excited to see people interested in it. My point was, I wish they had made different choices if they were making a new TCM for a new generation. They could have made some easy choices, not included some things, and still got their points across, is where I was going with that rant.
And what might surprise you, Mark, and maybe you'll pick up on some of this when you read my review tomorrow, is I agree with a lot of the points you're making. I also agree with the opposite position.
Well, way to be on the fence.
No, it's not. It's not fence sitting. It's more of like, okay, if they're going to go down this road, a road that I don't agree with, at least I think they made the best decisions thematically for making that awful choice. But yeah, you can read more tomorrow.
That's a good point, and we will definitely look for that tomorrow. But that's not while we're here. We are here for horror films. I did not intend this entire year to be horror films, just like I did not intend to go on a rant. But yes, folks, here we are in the spoiler room live. I haven't scared my good friend Ian away, Mr. Ian Simmons. How are you doing? He's here with us tonight.
I'm great. I didn't even need this cup of coffee, it turns out. I just need to listen to Mark talk about Texas Chainsaw.
and back
things got a little spicy for the pepper, you know.
They got a little spicy for the pepper. This is what happens, is when I am holding back, trying to restrain, and then I get an opportunity and yeah, it got a little spicy. And yes, Angelique, welcome to the spoiler room again. So glad you could join us. And so glad to have our live viewers with their favorite drink, I hope, as they came down the stairs and pulled up a chair and listened to us not talk Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Talk about what?
We are going to talk tonight about Dead Silence, 2007, from the guy who brought us Saw.
It's been 15 years since this came out. It's
right?
Crazy. Yeah.
It is crazy. So tonight we'll see. Hopefully Miss Angelique can stick with us, and we don't have too much lag thanks to the joys of the internet. Miss Angelique, would you mind giving the synopsis of Dead Silence? See,
Not
Ian,
a
you
bit.
get a pass. You get a pass.
Okay, give me
Aw.
1 second.
You had to hear
Let me
me just go off, so you know, by all means.
It's all fun. I still love you,
Dead
Mark.
Silence. Dead Silence is the story of Mary Shaw. She had no children, only dolls. And if you see her in your dreams, you must never, ever, ever scream. Or she's going to rip your tongue out.
With her own awful
Basically,
CGI tongue, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, this movie is CGI all over the place. Dead Silence is basically tracing a generational curse because the townspeople did Mary Shaw. You know, well, she deserved it.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
little.
She acts just a little. She did deserve it.
She deserved it, but it's a tale of supernatural revenge and creepy ass ventriloquist dummies. The end. I don't have my electric shaver, so I can't remember everything.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
I remember I only saw this twice, and once was in the theater, and the other time was this morning at 4 a.m. I was just in love with Donnie Wahlberg and that electric shaver. I don't know. It's just such a random thing that and at the end when his character dies and the shaver's still going
And
off on the floor next to him because he had it in his pocket. Oh, so good. So good. And to think that this is the same time when he was playing a grizzled cop in a blue tinged, seedy horror movie franchise, Saw. He was in the Saw sequels.
Yeah.
Playing a totally different kind of cop. It's not just like, oh, he's sleepwalking through both
I thought
roles.
that was
These
Mark.
are two distinct
Was
characters.
that Donnie?
No, that was Donnie.
Yeah,
Oh,
Mark
no, I
was
got
always
my Wahlbergs
been.
all mixed up.
Yeah, Mark would never deign to be in.
No.
Saw.
No.
Don't speak
Although I would love
too
to see him.
soon. Have you ever seen a little film called Fear?
That's true.
That was before he was, that was still he was basically almost just out of his underwear modeling phase.
He was no longer anti-DRUGGIE. No, this is his brother. And yeah, it's funny. Folks, if you haven't seen this film, I want to get initial feelings on it, and then we'll dive into this thing. Angelique, you remember when you saw this first?
Yeah. I got it out of the previewed DVDs at Blockbuster. And never looked back. It's actually my copy's sitting right over there.
So you bought it sight unseen from the used
sight
bin?
unseen because
Awesome.
it had a creepy ventriloquist doll on the cover. And you really can't go wrong with that.
No, you can't. Actually,
I tried to say that seriously. And
hey, it's previously viewed. It was in Blockbuster. It's probably like $3 or something like that, maybe, or $3 or $5 bin they had. So actually, I'm going to do a full pop here. Hold on, just one moment.
All
right.
There he goes. And now we are left in dead silence.
So I have.
Is he talking to his doll off screen?
No, I'm not. I have the other Dead Silence. We're not talking about the Danny Aiello Dead Silence film.
Oh no!
Oh, Ian. See, Ian, I always surprise you with a film. Here you go. Dead Silence with Danny Aiello. We're not talking about this one.
On the back, it still looks like a still from Do the Right Thing.
It does, doesn't it? I do have, I think, the actual Dead Silence on VHS somewhere. But yeah, we're not talking about this one, folks, tonight. So if you're here for
Would it be
Danny
great if I
Aiello's...
showed up ready to talk about the Danny Aiello movie? What the hell, Mark?
I had a brief moment of panic at about 6 o'clock this evening because I was like, wait a minute. What if he meant the other one?
No, I'm talking about a more fun one.
And let me tell
This
you, if I had the time today, y'all would be talking to a sock puppet. But I did not have the time.
well, that's a little TMI there. That's a little TMI there, Angelique. Sorry. So did you like it though? You blind bought it, and did you enjoy Dead Silence with the puppet? Our ventriloquist one.
Oh, it's just stupid. It's fun. I mean, it's just the dumbest movie. The
Yeah.
twist makes absolutely no sense. But it's dumb and it's fun. It's a Snickers bar for the brain.
I like that. I like that quite a bit. It's a Snickers bar from the brain.
Yeah.
You're not quite yourself. Here, watch Dead Silence. You'll feel better.
If you doze off, though, you will be hit with the subconscious urge to shave.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. And it never seemed to do anything. That was the whole thing. He was using it, and the hair was still there. It never actually seemed to cut any hair whatsoever.
And I think that's why he was making that quote unquote joke to Billy the doll about his, smooth complexion.
Silky smooth complexion.
Yeah,
yes.
I get the feeling that he was just like one of those naturally hairy guys, and he has to shave like 3 times a day because it's always like 5 o'clock shadow there.
Yeah, I wouldn't know what that's like. I stopped shaving for a month, and it just looked like I had a dirty face. So yeah, you could see it on the Final Cut thumbnails. I had like the scruff, and just it looked. Yeah, I was looking like a dime. I was looking like a dime store Shaggy. Okay, that's what I looked like. But
the pop singer?
No,
Wasn't
from
me?
Scooby Doo.
Oh.
So that's what I looked like. Dime store Shaggy from Scooby Doo. So Ian, you saw it in the theater, and then you saw it at 4 a.m. this morning, as opposed to 4 a.m. in the evening. Yeah, that's the way I've been. This month has been horrible. So what did you think of Dead Silence?
It's weird. Sorry, I don't mean to yawn. It's just that
I just reminded you how long you were up. I know. I apologize.
Really, it's odd. It's psychological trigger. It's kind of like when you like see someone yawn. Whenever I remind someone of how long I've been up, it just makes me yawn. But no, I don't remember. I remember really liking Dead Silence when I saw it in the theater, but I don't remember being scared by it. I just remember it being kind of cool. And watching it this morning, I got the same feeling. Like, I don't know if it's because I'm older now and like I'm a parent, so like I kind of have to put away that fear of stuff because I'm going to be the one going down into the dark basement to investigate scary noises. But it didn't freak me out, but it was a lot of fun. And it reminds me of that whole era of the early to mid 2000s when we were firmly in Saw territory, and that brought with it. I mean, this is not Lionsgate / Twisted Pictures. This was Universal saying, "Hey, we've got the Saw guy, the guys," because it's Lee Whannell writing a James Wan script. So they're like, bring some of that Saw magic over to Universal, and they did it. It's a big screen, kind of a throwback horror movie. It's a creepy doll picture, but it's James Wan, so it's very creative. Like the transitions are just insane. There's a bit where I know I'm getting off topic, but I'm just kind of talking about the things I loved. There's a scene where there's a car. The main guy, Ryan Quanten, is driving to his hometown. It's a long stretch of road. You see him driving on the highway. You see him pass the sign for the town, and the sign from the town has a wooded highway in it. So he's driving, it transitions into a little car driving in the town, and then as it ends the sign, it comes back into him on a different road driving actually into town. I'm like, what am I even watching here? Who thinks like this? Well, and I love it.
Yeah.
Well, that's not the first odd transition because, folks, the story is here. Jamie Ashen and his wife get a doll on his doorstep, and his wife ends up getting killed while he goes out to get takeout. That's within the first 10, 15 minutes of that's one of the things I love about this film is it doesn't waste any time. It gets to it's like you saw the creepy doll on the poster, we're giving you the creepy doll and a creepy death within the first 15 minutes of this film, instead of, waiting for a while, waiting for the doll to do some crazy shit. No, it does crazy shit pretty much out of the gate. And that's what I love about this movie, is that it's 95-minute runtime for one, which is, a refreshing thing for a film, especially nowadays. And it knows what it is, and it just gets in and it gives you what you want right away. It isn't exactly a scary movie, no, but it's fascinating to watch. It really is. There's that, where I was going with this is, after the death of his wife, we get this thing to where I think it comes out. It zooms out from him sitting on the step when his wife comes out. And as you come out, you're coming out through his eye. And then you're in another scene. And then that zooms out and you come through his eye again.
It's
and
wild.
I'm just like, what?
Well, and it's honestly, it's that kind of, artistry that I think elevates. I'm not the biggest fan of all of James Wan's movies, but I'm a fan of his direction.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the kind of thing that when people talk about James Wan horror, he does elevated horror within. It's a term that I'm not that big a fan of, but he does elevated horror within bread and butter horror. Like he'll take a creepy, slasher serial killer, jigsaw movie and a creepy doll movie, things that, if you'd seen them 30 years ago, be like, yeah, it's the 90th one of these that we've seen. But it's the style, it's the characters, oddly enough, that make it kind of memorable. The one thing I did not like about that opening scene is it had the same problem as The Ring from a few years earlier, which is there was something about the cheap looking makeup, whether it was I couldn't tell if it was a combination of CG or just like really crappy makeup. When his wife, you get that shot of her with her tongue ripped out, it just looks like a weird mess of putty, and I couldn't tell what I was looking at. It happened really quick, and I think that might have been merciful because it's such a shitty makeup job. Like, I don't know what was going on this as far like whenever I think part of the reason this thing doesn't scare me is because during the scary scenes, like when the mortician, you see him get his tongue ripped out and you see like kind of like a reflection and Mary Shaw's CGI monster tongue is coming out. It looks so bad and is so terribly
when it does
framed.
the
Like, what am I looking at?
and flies at him, yeah.
Yeah. Like,
does the what?
The woogie boogie thing where it's like, and it just kind of right at him.
Woogie boogie thing. I love that. That's
and help me out with something, because Angelique, you reminded me of something when you recited the poem at the beginning. It's like if you see her in your just dreams, make sure you don't scream. All these people are awake. Like this isn't. I mean, I know it's a ripoff of the Freddy Krueger origin, but none of this is like nightmare stuff.
No, they're all conscious, which is kind of confusing. I'm just like, it should have been like, beware the ghost of Mary Shaw, and if you see her, just shut your damn mouth.
If you see her, shut your maw. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, one of the things I liked about this is one of those films that really feels like, James Wan took off with his, Saw film, because Saw 2 and Saw 3, and by this time we had Saw 4. I mean,
and
so
he was I think he only did the first one.
He
right?
only directed the first one. Yeah. This was his film right after Saw. So he was executive producing, but he had a span of like 3 years from when Saw was released to this. And I think this is an example of someone had it hit and they gave him the opportunity to make a film that he wanted to make. This is, this felt like something that he was making, namely because, like I believe you mentioned it, Ian, this is a throwback film. I mean, he keeps the technology to a minimum, so it could be in anywhere. he also used a color palette and a grain to the movie to give it an older feel. This does not feel like a film necessarily from 2007, in all honesty.
I will disagree there because it
Okay.
has that same bluish muted color palette
Mhm.
as a lot of the Saw movies. It even has, like, if you're watching the opening credits
Mhm.
and listening to the opening score, you're like, this, you don't have to tell me what year this came out. I know this was
Okay.
this was in the mode of Saw. And that's not to say that it's bad, because I think it works for this particular story.
Mhm.
I don't think the Saw thing works for every horror movie, but in this case, it really does work. I think that's partially because you're in the hands of the person who sort of created the thing in the first place.
Yeah, he is the one that came up with the whole genre. Angelique, what'd you think of the look of this film? Do you think he was trying to kind of go retro outside of the opening? Because yeah, that credit sequence, which we do have one, is definitely from early aughts. So
I'm not sure if it was a retro thing he was going for or just something he liked. Like, we not only had that opening scene with him driving on the highway, but towards the end of the movie, when you're looking at the map and it's got the red "You Are Here" dot, and it cuts to the dot being his car, and that's the only thing in color as he travels towards the pavilion. I just
yeah.
thought, he's making the movie he wanted. Like Mark
Mhm.
said, this was a complete, okay, I've made you 4 Saw movies, now what do I get? This is James Wan's Freaks.
Yeah.
Well, but
You know?
in terms, well, I mean, as far as like the throwback thing, I'm just thinking, like, you look at like the 1980s, you had a
Mhm.
bunch of like creepy doll kind of,
Mhm.
killer movies. You didn't really see that in the. I'm stretching to think, and there's probably some out there who are like, what about these movies? Like, the 90s and the early 2000s, that just seemed kind of passe because it was all about like the serial killer and that kind of a deal. So it feels like he was sort of taking something. I agree with you, Angela. I think something he loved, something he grew up on, and said, we need. I want to make my stamp, my take on a creepy doll movie. And then you look at everything that from Saw and this movie that would show up in later films. Billy the puppet or Billy the doll is the same as Billy the puppet from Saw. They've got the
Right.
same name. You've got, from Insidious, you've got the creepy Mary Shaw type looking, woman with almost the same expression, the same practical makeup in some of those scenes. And then you've also got the Annabelle doll. You've got this doll motif that keeps popping up and making the guy $1 billion.
Well, I
Actually, that's
I
one of
lo-
the Easter eggs in Dead
Mhm.
Silence is that the jigsaw doll is in the
Yes,
case.
that's right.
I
Yeah.
think maybe I saw that in the theater, but I missed it this time.
It's very brief,
Yeah.
but yeah, the jigsaw looking doll is in the case that gets set fire. Because yeah, his wife dies, so he goes back to a small town to bury her because apparently she's from the same town he is. And that's where we meet his estranged father and his stepmother, which plays into the plot later with the big twist, which I don't care how weird it is, I love that twist. Even if it makes absolutely no sense, I don't care. That was lovely. I love the twist. And the twist of it, folks, is he meets his father, who's the stepmom says that his father's had a stroke and no one told him because he's been estranged or whatever. And so he meets up with his father and he sees his father a few other times. And it turns out that Mary Shaw wasn't the only ventriloquist in town. His stepmother was, only she picked a different type of doll.
Well, and she also herself was a doll,
Mm-hmm.
which is, odd. I mean, that's something they could have left open for like a sequel or something, because they keep coming back to this little flap in Mary Shaw's journal where she's designing all of these dolls. And there's always this little flap held by a piece of scotch tape that says the perfect doll is. And then at the end, in the Saw type montage, we see that finally flipped over and we see the little drawing of
Her head, yeah,
yes,
her face.
yeah, it doesn't make any sense. But and that's the thing is, I think the first time I saw it, I didn't catch the framing of the father and the mother-in-law. But this morning, like their first scene, I was like, of course she's manipulating him the whole time, because she's constantly next to him, not just in the room, but next to him. And there's a brief shot where I think Jamie storms out of the room when he's talking to them, and then she kind of goes after him. There's a split second, like an Easter egg for people who are paying attention, where you see her leave and his body is just kind of like hunched over in the chair.
Yeah.
So it's very
and
it's
if
clever
you pay
and it's
attention
fun.
to his makeup as the movie progresses, you know, he already looks dead, but he's starting to rot as the movie goes on, which I'm like, I was watching the first time and I was like,
And he's wearing the big like black, you know, tux bow tie. Like, I know he's a rich old man, but who just like hangs out in their house like that?
Oh, because he's
after
dressed
6 o'clock. What are we, farmers?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, he was dressed up similar to a doll as well. That's what I like about, you know, I think that's what the big thing was with Saw 2 is James Wan, if anything, when he makes these films, you know, he puts the clues out there and you smack your head once you actually see them, you know, and it's not like an M. Night thing. He does it with a little bit more style, I think. And this one especially, it's like you said, after you know this, which we've just spoiled, if you know it the second time you look for it, you see, oh, it right there and right there. And, you know, you're like,
but you know what? The key there, I think, is that even if you figure it out in that opening scene, if you've never seen this movie before, you're like, oh, he looks like a dummy. This whole thing's about a dummy. And so that lady is somehow manipulating this guy. There's still the question of how does it work? And you don't find out until the very end where you see that big dowel in the back of his, you know, corpse and everything. Like, that's cool. Instead of just like, I don't care. I can turn this off. I know everything. You don't know everything until the very end.
You don't know everything. And, you know, the whole small town has a story thing. I like that idea. It is playing towards the Nightmare on Elm Street thing where they went out and sought Mary Shaw, aka, you know, you had the people of Elm Street go after Freddy because Shaw kidnapped a young boy to make her own large puppet out of the young man.
He kind of deserved it.
He did, because the young man was from the audience and made fun of her when she was doing her act, which I found interesting because of the time period it was. To have a female ventriloquist actually had to be kind of a interesting novel thing for the audience, you know, because that is not something you normally equate with. No offense to anybody, I'm stating, especially for that time, you don't equate ventriloquism with a female, especially back then when it was supposed to be, you know, the vaudeville act that she was doing. So that had to be it had to be a challenge for her already. And then you got some kid giving you shit from the audience. So yeah,
that's the only scene that actually was a little scary, when she and the puppet start just going off on this kid. I'm like, I want to go. We're done. I don't need to finish the show. Please, Mom, can we go?
And and I love that the audience burst out into applause because she starts having an argument with and that's where it gets a little bit fuzzy as far as what is going on with, you know, is the doll evil? Is she evil? Because after she's dead, it appears that she's able to possess these dolls and manipulate them and do all sorts of like magic things. But up until that point, I don't know who or where the malevolent force lies. You can't think about the mythology of this too much. Unlike Freddy Krueger, who was just a child molester who got caught, he got off because of his lawyer, and the townspeople went after him. In this case, I mean, you said that the kid kind of deserved it. I think that's a bit far because he's like 11 and
yeah,
it's not a big thing for an 11-year-old kid to be a dick and be like, I can see your mouth moving. Why are you people so impressed, you rubes?
I don't think
they
Angelique
obviously never watched Edgar Bergen. I mean,
I don't think Angelique is advocating
No,
kids get.
Oh,
I
I
do
am.
not.
No, I'm sorry.
I would just like to say now that the expressed opinions of Ian Simmons do not reflect the Spoiler Room or its producer in any way, shape, or form.
Oh, believe me, we established that during the Patreon show. No,
touche, my friend, touche.
no, but I mean that's the thing is the lore is a bit iffy, but they don't spend too much time on it to the point where you're taken out of the movie, or at least I wasn't. It was after it was over. I'm like, how does this all line up? You know, but yeah, it's
Is while you're watching it, it makes perfect sense. You're along for the ride. It's Pirates of the Caribbean. You're passing the dudes in the jail. You're passing the dudes drinking rum, and you're like, cool. But when you sit and think about it, it completely crumbles.
yeah.
Well, I mean, that's because it's as I mentioned, 95-minute runtime. This film is lean. It presents you with just enough to keep things moving, is what it does. I mean, they give you enough to really like, okay, I mean, because as you mentioned, Ian, we didn't get a whole lot of like doll films those were pushed on to Charles Band and his Puppet Master series and Full Moon doing the evil doll stories, or the B movies were doing evil dolls after a while. You weren't getting theatrical release. So to have Wan give you this one, 95 minutes, which is an old school runtime, dealing with an old school theme, it is him doing something that for a film you can tell he loves, because there's care put into this. There's jokes, there is humor, but there is a level of respect of sorts to it, to where the doll is legitimately creepy. While not scary, the Billy doll, there's scenes in here that are legitimately creepy. Like, he does this wonderful gimmick of the eyes, just having the eyes move. It's not like this is a full animatronic coming after Chucky.
Right.
All that moves usually with the doll on screen, outside of maybe a glimpse or a flash movement, is the eyes moving or the head moving. Like that wonderful shot in the early where the wife puts the doll down on the bed and you've got the mirror shot. And so she then looks at herself, and then when she moves the mirror, the head went from looking away to looking towards her. I love that.
Well, and that's the thing is, unless it's your first horror movie, that's not scary.
No,
but it's fun.
Right.
Because you're almost like waiting for it to happen. It's like going to see a concert, and then they're gonna play Freebird. I know it, and then they play it. But no, what I loved about that scene is when the doll does attack her, and you see her crawl out into the hall. She's covered in that white sheet, and then you see the hand just reach out and like smack the wooden floor. I'm like, that is a James Wan shot. It just looks cool. It's dramatic. It's weird. And there's like the bizarre poetry to it. The one thing I didn't care for is when she coughs and she coughs up the blood, she coughs up like chocolate syrup, like this big splat. I'm like, it'd been more effective, and I think chilling her if she had just like coughed up like she got punched in the gut like really bad. Or something like that. Instead of like she wasn't possessed.
She hit the ground hard. That's all. Really hard. Really hard. Yeah. So yeah, that whole scene too, where, and the other gimmick, that's this isn't supposed to be like just a James Wan jerk fest, but sorry, but there are the guy knows how to make horror films. Whether or not you agree they're really good horror films, he knows visually how to make horror films, and he knows how to use easy gimmicks in an effective way. The film is called Dead Silence because when the doll's going to do its deed and do its thing, you get silence almost everywhere. The everything slows down and it's silent. And why that is an effective gimmick is after you use it the first time, he uses it like 3 more times. And as things slow down, you're like, oh shit. I mean, it's a great establishing gimmick. That's the simplest, really, if you think about it, gimmick you could do. I just am going to take out these other audio channels, and suddenly you're just going to have that. And you're like, but it's effective with that first establishing kill you get. And that's what I like about his techniques. While I don't always agree his films are that well written a lot of times, visually and the elements he uses are like old school and great gimmicks, horror gimmicks that, like you said, Ian, you know the gimmick, you know what you're going to get. You've seen it before. Doesn't mean you don't like it.
Well, right. And it's not like going to see a Friday the 13th movie where you're just waiting to see what the next set piece kill is and the bad teenage dialogue in between. Even though you probably know what you're going to get with this movie, it's going to have some flair, some visual style. And that's the other thing about seeing this in a theater is even if I'm not scared, there's going to be someone who's going to be freaked out. So you got this kind of collective experience. Like, this is going to be someone's first horror movie. I'm going to be in the auditorium to experience it. You do lose something in the translation of watching it at home.
I almost wish, but the detective dies at the end. I almost wish the detective was the same detective, because this feels, Angelique, would you say this feels like it would be in the Saw universe? I mean, you could easily have this in the Saw universe, couldn't you?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I was kind of hoping it was him, or maybe like his twin brother who went into the detective.
That would have been, twin brother would have worked, because as I mentioned, they're totally different cops.
Yeah, they are.
The guy in this movie, Detective
that would have
Lipton,
been perfect.
He's gruff, but he's not corrupt. The guy from the Saw movies is like, he beats up witnesses and like plants evidence.
This guy was a doofus. He was not a good detective.
But he gets one of the best lines. He gets one of the best lines in this film when we're getting near the climax, and our boy, he knows where he's got to go. He's got to go to this rundown theater to confront Mary Shaw. Finally, he's put it together. She got buried with her dolls. The detective found out all the dolls are gone. He doesn't quite suspect our husband, but he's not quite sure. And he's going to arrest him because, hey, he's the only, because otherwise he's got to report to his captain that a doll is alive, and that ain't going to happen. So our main character escapes. He goes, "No, don't leave. Don't take off. I don't have a full tank of gas." I don't think I've ever heard a car chase start with the detective going, "I don't have a full tank of gas."
That sounded like an ad lib or something. It did. Like But it's funny you mentioned this guy isn't the greatest detective. I love Mary Shaw was buried. There's like a little, like a pet cemetery / doll cemetery where all the dolls are buried. They have their own little headstones. I love that Detective Lipton apparently figures out that all the dolls have been moved by going and digging up all the dolls, because there's that one shot. I'm like, wouldn't you have figured it out by like the fifth empty grave?
Yeah, because she made 101
99
dolls.
Tiny little graves, and all the caskets are empty.
Oh,
bless him. Just bless his heart.
He's trying.
And he had a lot of energy for having just spent, like, I don't know, an entire day digging up 99. Wow. Yeah.
He did. He was great. He had great moments. I loved it. He almost had, he's like a poor man's Columbo in many ways, though. The way he stays on the suspect, right? Angelique is one of those.
So what I'm asking the questions, Jamie. So what are you going to do? No, you tell me, sir. You're the detective.
Or when he shows up at the hotel because he tracks him down, and this wonderful, again, James Wan shot establishing this motel that our characters are staying at. You're like, that's a beautiful shot of this crummy motel.
That gave me the Kenny Rogers Roasters episode of Seinfeld flashbacks. That red light in the ventriloquisty.
You had the red light, the storm clouds in the back. It's like when you get that first establishing scene. Then later on, when you see the motel, it's like flat and in the light and everything. But he gets the room next to him and he grabs the doll, and you just get that whole scene like, I'm just going to be your neighbor. And he's like, neighbor. And he looks and he's like,
yeah, he makes the doll wave the hand. Now, here's aside, this is the boneheaded thing on Jamie's part. I understand maybe bringing the doll back to the hometown, but why do you have it in your motel room with you. Leave it in the trunk. Don't prop it up on a chair by the window where the creepy light's gonna flash on you all night. Because if you wake up from a nightmare, you're just gonna be waking right into another nightmare.
To that note, when a strange box arrives at your front door and it's full of a nasty ass, scary ventriloquist dummy, no, boot that thing into the dumpster. Don't bring it into your house. Maybe your wife would still be around.
Well, that's the other thing is like when they open up the trunk, like we see it from the back, we see the lid open, we see them react to what's inside. You know, unless they're like the most chill, whatever people, they're gonna be freaked out by that.
Well,
you know, we found a neighbor left. This is a couple months ago. They left a really nice old portrait on our front doorstep. We took it in. It's sitting down here in the basement because it is a really nice painting. You know, I don't know who it is or who gave it to us, but I feel like someone was like throwing out stuff and like, oh, they seem like artsy people. We'll give them this
That
painting.
shit's haunted. You need to get rid of it now.
What's the thing?
I was gonna say.
Well, that's the thing. It's like when my wife brought it in, I was like, "Oh, that's really cool," and she's like, "Freaks me out. We got to get rid of it." Like, I'll just throw it in the basement. It's oh shit. Sorry. No. But that's the thing. Is like the human reaction is like, especially when a ventriloquist dummy shows up, you're like, not like, oh,
get rid.
Well, again, this is one of those where it's in the moment movie. You don't want to think too much to it because it crumbles fairly quickly, like you said, Angelique, because you're sitting there going, okay, they're either completely freaked out when you get a package like that, or they're both from the small town that had a legend about
the ventriloquist dummy. Yeah.
That they knew.
I guess the only excuse I can give them is that she wanted Chinese food and he needed to go and get those rangoons
because she was pregnant. He didn't know it,
right.
But she was pregnant.
But
she was pregnant and she had a craving.
Chinese food, go. I don't give a shit. I'll deal with the ventriloquist dummy. Go get the food.
Right. That's true. She was very hungry. So and knowing from experience, when you have an expectant mother that wants something, you go get it immediately, or you pay for it later.
Hey, here's a question. What's a doll's favorite type of takeout?
Oh,
barbecue.
Oh,
sorry. I apologize.
That's gonna be my next salad joke.
Nice. So the cast of characters you have in here, we've already talked about the detective and the dad and the stepmom, but you get this wonderful character in the coroner. I love the story of the coroner and his wife who has either dementia or she has a mental illness of some sort. And I love this story, this guy who discovered the kid. He was around when Mary Shaw was, alive and killed, and his dad was the one that prepared her body and made her look like a puppet, which is actually a pretty creepy image.
Yeah, the casket falls on him and everything. Here's the thing, like, if you're the mortician and that is in her will, it's her last wish, do you honestly have to go through or can you just get the guy from the next county over? He's into weird shit.
I honestly want to ask the funeral director here about that, because that's my thing. I'm like, do you have to?
She didn't have family.
Is it legal?
She didn't have family or anything. You could have just left it a closed casket. Who's gonna know if you actually made her into a doll or not?
Then,
but
yeah, no one's gonna know.
Here's a question: how did I missed this detail? But how did she die? I know the townspeople came after her, but did they hang her?
They came after her and they made her scream and they cut out her tongue.
Yeah.
Then I don't know if she just died from that or if they did extra. They don't go into any more.
They don't really go any more detail either. Yeah, I think they cut out her tongue and she either bled out or they hung her. They don't really go into it. It's just
choked on it or something. Or
They cut out her tongue. They took care of her as the kid, which kind of makes sense because if he's older, if he's a young kid, he wouldn't necessarily know all the details. He's telling the story from his perspective. So as far as all he heard was that they cut her tongue out and then she died and she showed up in Dad's workshop. So,
I only bring that up because, you think of like a mob of people. I've got Freddy Krueger in my head. They burned him to a crisp. Her body, even though the guy turned her into a doll, she seemed pretty well preserved. So I don't know. They didn't like stab her a million times or something like that. I just it was a detail that I think I felt like I missed during the movie. Like, how did she actually die? But
doesn't really say.
Probably,
they don't really say. She just died, and she got like, I don't know what coffin she picked out. I don't know if they picked that out for her or what, but it's like a freaking tank. That thing is like, it's got the old concrete bar. It was like,
the high neck thing that I'll never be able to wear in my entire life, even though I want to so bad. The sleeves with the ruffles, just yes, I want to haunt little children's dreams.
The opinions of Angelique do not reflect the opinions of the Spoiler
Room podcast. Special Mark Productions shall not have any liability
or responsibility whatsoever upon the actions of our guests. No, but so you get the small town, you get the corridor. He gives the big reveal. They go to the theater. This wonderful set piece. I loved the theater and the attic, the whole case of dolls, which you hear them talk about the case of dolls, and then you get this wonderful reveal in the attic as they're exploring the Mary Shaw stuff. And I loved the reveal of the doll case because you're like, holy shit, they actually have the doll.
And then that just highlights too what a big deal she was for the town or the theater or whoever to make this permanent installation for every single one of her 100 ventriloquist dummies. She was a big freaking deal.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ian.
No, I was going to say, the thing that struck me most about this is, the case and that kind of like attic performance area is great. But I love the rundown theater because I couldn't tell if James Wan and the production designer found an abandoned theater and just went with it, or if they just decided to like build this as a set, because it looked like every detail from the dust to like the weird kind of curtains that were draped over the seats that almost looked like it had fallen down over the years and just kind of been left there. It looked like a place that you could actually visit. Not that you'd want to, but it's gorgeous. And it's the kind of attention to detail that I think James Wan is known for, along with many other things we've discussed. But it's just so immersive. Again, it's not creepy, but it still feels real enough to be kind of weird.
Yeah, well, I mean,
it reminded me a lot of the place from Carnival of Souls.
Oh, there you go. Yeah,
that big Palladium that's still standing. It reminded me a lot of that.
Yeah, well, you get the wonderful shot of the front, and you see that it kind of is sunken in, and you've got to get to it by boat. Where initially we saw it, and you didn't. People were walking up on dry land on it, but here, or there was a bridge, but now you've got to get to it by boat. Which apparently there were two boats there. I didn't question it. Donnie said, well, only your boat and my boat are there. And I'm like, where'd your boat come from, Donnie? Because I only saw one boat at the dock.
Well, he comes across the boat. It's like kind of off to the side.
True,
but
yeah.
I wondered about like that whole thing, because you mentioned, Mark, that it's kind of sunk in. That's something I didn't quite catch. I like that idea that over time it kind of recessed and it became inaccessible. But I was like, how did all those people get to these theatrical performances? It doesn't seem very convenient that they make this giant theater in the middle of a swamp or wherever the hell it is.
Well, I think there was a bridge at one time or something. When you get the outside
during
shot
the flashback, you see them walking across this really nice
bridge
walkway. Yeah.
Well, that's another thing too that he does effectively visually is that you get the flashbacks. You first time we actually see the theater where she performed, it's this wonderful, beautiful looking theater, and then we cut to our hero going out there the first time, and it's just run down and looking like a bad guy hideout. You're just like, why would you even go in there? Why?
Well, speaking of why, the thing that pulled me out of the movie, just briefly, and I understand why they did it, but it still didn't work for me. I laughed out loud early in the morning. I had to kind of keep it down. But the bit where they revealed that after Mary Shaw died, families started showing up dead, like posed in these weird family portraits. I'm like, no, that didn't happen.
And
No.
and every single one of them had that, late 90s, early 2000s ghost mouth where they're just like,
Well, it was supposed to be like a puppet. It was supposed to be like
Yeah.
a puppet, like just like her dolls.
And at the end, when we see the photo album of like the main characters from the movie have been added to this photo album, the Donnie Wahlberg one, I was like, I had to go back and rewind. I'm like, wait, who is that guy? Oh, that's supposed to be Donnie Wahlberg. The art was just so bad.
The art for Donnie's character was bad during the end credit. Yeah, during that.
It looked like a bad school photo. It was like, he.
One of the other things that kind of caught me too, again, this is supposed to be a fun horror film. This isn't necessarily meant to be a completely scary horror film, though I will say there are a couple creepy moments, which we'll get to in a minute, in the theater during the final act here, where the detective is with our guy, Jamie. You have my brain just flew out of the idea just flew away. Shit. Where was I?
Hate when that happens.
I lost it now. It's gone. Scary moments. Yes, there are scary moments in here. What got me was the kid. Okay, I'm trying to do the time frame. I'm like, Mary Shaw, okay, looking at the coroner's age, 50 years? There's Stamp Swamp, and the kid puppet's body, the actual human kid who was turned into a puppet by Mary Shaw, is still in the attic and looking actually pretty damn good for a corpse of like 50 some years. I mean, he's still got his eyes. I mean, he looks more like somebody went to town with him on a knife, with a knife, than he did actually like a decomposed body. You would think by then, with the critters and everything.
Were glass.
Well, that's right. The eyes were glass. That's right. So the eyes were
glass. And if you watch as they're coming up into that area, she's got that rack of bottles of chemicals and everything like that.
That's true.
So, I mean, she preserved and plasticized as best she could, this kid.
Yeah, I was thinking, because when we first see that body, he's been kind of posed, so she probably stored him somewhere or preserved him somehow over the years. He looked pretty wretched. Yeah.
But he should have looked more wretched. That's my problem. I wanted more wretchedness. No,
that opinion does reflect the views of the Spoiler Room podcast.
That does exactly. No, like I said, there are some creepy moments with the gimmick, with the sound, the eyes, moving. I think there's one great, even though it's a bad CG, it ends in bad CGI. There is a great thing starting where you've got the detective and our hero up in the attic. You get just the reveal of the dolls, and then you get the one doll in the rocking chair, rocking, and she looks over, and then you just get the hands around the face at first, to where you just see Mary Shaw's ghost hands, and then he does the fucking Insidious thing or whatever, where you just have the bad guy, creepy makeup, peer partially above the head. I love that shot. Of course, that it's
another
bad
scene.
CGI.
But it's also something that he would go on to use this in Insidious and other movies. So it's kind of the fun thing about watching a director, like a genre director, evolve, is you get to see where a lot of these things kind of came from and were either repurposed or improved on later. It's a lot of fun. I like that scene was okay. I like the bit where the coroner was in the crawl space. Towards the end, and you see the little doll hand come around, just kind of grab onto the corner. You see it very far away, and then you see it kind of close up, and yeah, it's just this little hand.
Connie's very small hands. No, Angelique, did you have a favorite creepy moment or one that stood out for you?
I mean, just that the whole retro theater scene really freaked me out. I'm not a fan of ventriloquist dummies, just regular, but having them screaming at a child in an audience just kind of makes that. Ugh. But the moments where the sound drops, that just makes my hair stand on end, because I don't like silence as a general rule. It's PTSD from being a latchkey kid.
Right? Yeah.
If there's silence, something's going on, and it's not good. So when the sound just into silence, I'm like, oh my god, what is it?
Again, that effective tool to where instead of he could have easily just cut the audio right away, to where it goes silent. And you're like, oh, okay. But the fact that he slowly descends you into silence is just that much more effective. It's just that little extra. Oh, okay. It's what's going to happen now? What creepy thing's going to happen?
This is very uncomfortable. Now who's going to die?
Well, for me, it was because it's not like he sucks all the sound out of the picture.
No,
it's like the ambient noise, like wind rustling through, outside or something like that. And so for me, I found myself when those scenes when I would notice it, I would start thinking, wait, how long has it been like this? has it been silent for 2 seconds or a minute? Like, how close am I to something scary happening? Oh my God, now I'm freaking myself out.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing that this movie does effectively, is you're going to scare yourself more than what's happening on the screen is going to scare you. I mean, they had all the jump scare attempts with the ghost of Mary Shaw coming out of things and rushing towards you. And my biggest thing is, at the end, if you scream, you're going to die. Yet Jamie and the detective, I'm so sorry that I can't remember his name.
Lipton.
But all they're doing in this theater is screaming at each other. Get the light! What light? I don't know. Shut your mouth! You're gonna die.
When they're in front of Mary Shaw, they're covering their mouths, which I thought was a fun gimmick, because you had Donnie, you had Lipton, and he's trying not to scream at first as he's falling, and he ends up screaming, and she gets him. And then a few minutes later, not even like a minute later, Jamie's on the walk and he gets knocked off. And there's this wonderful shot of the camera following him down as he breaks through the floor. And as he does, he's like, with his hands, he covers his mouth.
But that's a technicality, because he's still screaming behind those hands. Well, like the impulse is there. I just want there to be. I want her to come out with like a clipboard and be like, well, technically, I can still take you to the underworld because you're afraid.
Yes, James, actually, you did make an exclamation behind your hands. So, your tongue, please.
Yeah.
Technically, that was a scream by definition, regardless of if it's behind your hands and whether or not I see it. You did still scream. Yeah. So, yes, we're going to have to confiscate your tongue. I can rip it out now, or we can go upstairs back to the attic where I can rip it out there. Your choice, really. I'm very fair in that.
And the entire movie, like, Jamie has really not made much noise at all, even when very startling things that would make anybody just kind of go out of reflex, he doesn't. So I don't know if that's left over from when he was a kid. He just doesn't scream at all. But what does make him scream is his hot stepmom turning into Mary Shaw.
Yeah.
The whole...
I'd be conflicted. I'd be like, hey, mommy, make me scream. But no,
again, the opinions of Ian Simmons do not reflect.
No, I think the reason Ryan Quanten was not screaming or saying much of anything in this movie is because whenever he did open his mouth, I noticed, because he's an Australian actor, and he was doing that whole thing of like trying to not have an Australian accent, so it just ended up like this flat thing, like, where are you from? I can hear the Aussie like sneaking out around the edges. Just be Australian. It's okay. This is America. It's a melting pot. We have people from other
I'm
places.
American, mate.
Yeah, that's a choice, not just in this, but other films that we've had that too, where it's an actor with an accent or from another country, and you look at the role and you go, there's absolutely no reason why you have to cover up your accent for this. There just isn't. And I always loved that. I love that first shot of when he first sees his stepmom too. You're right. He's like, oh, hey. And then she's like, oh, I must be your stepmom. And he's like, this is awkward. Okay.
Hi, Missy. I mean, Mom.
Yeah, Mom. Dude, remember when your mom was a senior and we were a freshman in high school? Shut up, Ted. You remember when I tried to ask your mom to the prom? Shut up, Ted.
I could totally see down your mom's blouse.
But one other thing that I really liked about the dad thing, and we'll wrap it up. I mean, it's not a deep film, it's not a long film, but it's an interesting film. But one thing I got a kick out of was his dad, and how how Jamie first left after, he first initially argues with his father to leave. I've got a funeral to plan. And as he walks down the stairs, he's talking to his, Stacy's mom. He's talking to, his new stepmom. And he's like, maybe he'll find someone, to paint you out of the picture. Because as he's going by, he's pointing at paintings. My first mom, and you're like, there's no mom in that picture. Then he points to the second one, where the dad had actually painted the mom out of the picture. And I loved that little bit.
That's some Mr. Burns shit.
that is some serious.
I actually had an uncle who did that.
What?
It wasn't paintings. It was like family photos.
Yeah.
And like with his, I think it was his first wife. They were together for a long time. So there are a lot of family photos, like group photos. And one day I noticed, I was 11 years old or something. And I noticed, wait, all of these pictures have like little like black circles in them. Wow. What is that about?
Wow. That's hardcore right there.
Yeah.
It's just like the dad, though. I'm like sitting there going, paint you out. I'm like, and then my brain, of course, the way my brain works, because it's broken. Just listen to the Patreon and never mind. And my brain is broken, and I'm sitting there going, God, that had to be a bear to paint out of, that just had to be I'm like, wow, that took some work to paint them. How do you do? My brain was thinking for just a minute, like, wow, that took some work.
I thought the same thing.
It wasn't just me. At least it wasn't just me.
I mean, that's some dedicated hatred. I mean, that's just this whole town is messed up. I mean,
and that's the thing, is we only meet a few members of the town, but you get the impression this whole town, it really is just screwed up. Like, I would love you. Could you imagine a Dead Silence series? Almost. I would love to explore this town and the history and just find out, like, they all have some weird macabre background.
I want a prequel so bad. I want a prequel that like goes through Mary turning the kid into the doll. I want that really bad, but we'll never get it.
Well, I would think that there'd have to be, if there's going to be a series, it'd have to be like an X-Files series, because
Sure.
if there's like one town where like, okay, one family being turned into like dolls and having these creepy photographs taken, but then like by the time you get to the fifth or sixth family, you got the feds coming in to investigate like what the hell's going on in this town.
That's how small this town is that it's so small, it's off the radar. You have all these families who died. He has to take the pictures. Doesn't say he has to report it.
But these are theater people. It's not like hayseed, like, farmers or something like that. Because you see from the flashback, this town has a really nice theater.
This is a rich little town.
Right. People are going to notice that, Daddy Warbucks is now, a Ken doll.
I mean, when you do think about it, that is a big hole, because the detective researching what town this guy's from, seeing all these murders, should have maybe I don't know, said something.
Well, we've already established he's not exactly the brightest bulb on the detective.
He was too busy shaving, and
he was he was shaving. He was constantly shaving, and that was distracting him from the fact that there were families dying left and right. And no one apparently has really heard of it, nor did the detective run across that.
It's just details.
That's just details. Well, again, it presents you enough to have some fun with this. This is made for fun horror fans to pick out all the cool things, and just enjoy the ride. Like you said, by the end of it, you're like, okay, wait a minute. You don't want to think too hard, because otherwise you drive those holes through the plot. It's just really wide and far.
I just thought of a shaving pun, gang. That detective was no brains, but all brawn.
Oh,
sorry.
Nice.
He was not a cut above the rest. So no.
He was not the best a man can get.
No. Huzzah, Angelique wins, I think. Angelique wins that. So we'll wrap it up here with Dead Silence. James Wan, him just having fun after he had a big hit. I always like seeing directors kind of do that. It's kind of like when Sam Raimi went back to his horror roots after doing 3 Spider-Man films and having the bad experience with Spider-Man 3. And what did he follow those up with? Drag Me to Hell, which
I love that movie.
Is a wonderful horror film.
That movie's so good.
It is so good. Again, it's another one where you don't think too hard about, but you have fun with it. It's like he's made all this bank with the Spider-Man films. Now he wants to get back to his horror film roots, and he makes this wonderful Drag Me to Hell film. And that's what it's kind of like James Wan here. He took that Saw money and he made his own horror film that he wanted to make. Universal said, sure, we got the name. They get enough, their name was built up enough by that point. So it recognized in the horror community, we'll at least get the horror people in their butts in the seat, because we know horror fans, regardless of how much we either like or dislike a property and complain incessantly about it, we will go see a horror film in the big screen. It happens. You're gonna go to the theater regardless. And that's what I think. Go ahead.
Well, just real quick.
Yeah.
It occurs to me, this is one of those rare horror movies where it doesn't really leave things open for a sequel. I know Mary Shaw closes the book, but you really do get the feeling that after she kills Jamie, because she made the reference to Jamie that the reason she went after his wife is because the last of his bloodline was actually in her womb.
Right.
So she was just going to kill everybody who was involved in her death, and she kind of succeeds. It's not like Freddy Krueger where he's like, I'm going to kill you and your kids and your kids' kids, and all throughout the time. She like had a definite mission, and when she closed that album, she's like closing the book. I wonder if she's going to go on to her final rest or to hell or whatever, but it wasn't like, yeah, stay tuned for Dead Silence 2. It's kind of nice.
That's a good point.
Yeah, it does. I mean, with her closing the book, that's kind of your standard horror ending, but at the same time, yeah, there's nothing at all in the story that leads you to think that you're going to get any more of this. She very well live in her theater what's left of it after it burns down, she may even still live in the swamp or whatever with, Corpse Kid. So, she's still got the Corpse Kid if he doesn't burn up. So,
well, see, no, he burned the last doll. He didn't destroy his dad doll, though.
No.
So there is still the potential for, somebody discovering that. But after this long, I doubt it.
Yeah.
I just want to hear an album by Corpse Kid. That sounds like a great death metal band.
Corpse Kid, Dead Silence. It's an entire record that's no, it's an entire album with no sound. How fucking alternative retro is that? We are the Corpse Kids. Here's our new album, Dead Silence. Nothing for both side A or B.
No, that's Spinal Tap.
Pootie Tang already did it, though.
That's true. Could you imagine their concerts, though? They'd just be up there going, here's Dead Silence.
Shut up. Hey, we got a title idea for the sequel from Mr.
Derek Carey. There he is. Dead Silence 2, The Silencing. Okay. The Silencing. I like that. I'm just picturing the phone. Way to go. Thanks. Now there goes my brain, just starts playing right off of that idea. Dead Silence 2, The Silencing would be Dead Silence. You could do Dead Silence 3. The sound Silencer. There you go. Dead Silence 4, The Sound of Silence. You could maybe get, licensing for Art Garfunkel and I'd get the
we could play
version.
Sound of Silence in minor key.
There you go. Sound of Silence in the key of E flat, or whatever.
I'm all for it. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do that. We're resurrecting the dead, and then we'll do the crossover of Danny Aiello coming in from the Dead Silence movie to be in the Dead Silence franchise at that point.
Do we have to have a Dead Silence seance?
Oh, the Dead Seance. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
New movie, Dead Seance. There we go.
Dead Seance. You've got to line up all the corpses and make sure the corpses are holding hands.
That's why you twine them together, interlock those fingers.
There you go.
Sorry, I have to.
That sounds like something. Well, no, it just sounds like something you might see in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I just wanted to bring it all back around.
You brought it all back around.
Bring it back.
You brought it all back around. I've apologized already for my trigger off camera. My triggering that happened. I broke my vow, man. I feel so horrible that I did that to you guys. And so, but final thoughts there's
a lot of complicated feelings around that movie.
There are.
People are conflicted. I'm conflicted.
It's the same confliction I had with the shot for shot, and I put it in quotes, remake of Psycho. That's a whole nother conversation.
Yes.
But, okay, we won't get into that. What we will get into is final thoughts here. We'll wrap it up here. Final thought with Dead Silence. Angelique, ladies first. Your final thought with this. Would you recommend it?
But of course, I'm going to recommend it. I break it out every now and then. If I just want something that I know what's going to happen, it's a low-key, just kind of stupid-ass, turn on your brain and enjoy it movie. Yeah, Dead Silence is going on.
And Ian, your final thought with Dead Silence?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I rented this from Amazon, and then I noticed that the Blu-ray is on sale for like $9, and I'm just about to pull the trigger. I gotta check out and see if there's extra features, because I would love to see
what are the special features on it.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm hoping, like, if there's a commentary of Lee Wanell and James Wan talking about the movie, I'm probably definitely gonna buy it, because that sounds like it'd be a lot of fun. I've got
some Mandela effect going on, because I distinctly remember an unrated cut of Dead Silence.
There is an unrated cut
that had a commentary track, and I remember listening to it. But my DVD is not unrated and does not have a commentary track. So I'm like, what has happened?
Well, it's probably because it's the Blockbuster. I don't think Blockbuster carried unrated movies.
No, it didn't at the time, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
there is the Blu-ray. Looking at it now, there is the uncut. It is $9 on Blu-ray.com, in stock now, unrated. And it's the packaging. Oh, they don't have it there. I've got it right here. I was looking to see if I could see what extras were on it, but it doesn't have really
Derek knows. Check the
Derek.
comments.
The commentary track is silent.
Dead silent.
Which, shout out to Mr. Derek Carey of Astro Radio Z Podcast Patreon. Go check him out. I'm going to give a shameless plug. He does streaming occasionally. He's got wonderful episodes on there where he's foolish enough to have some of us on them. How dare he? I don't know what he's thinking, but but that's okay. But yes, check him out. Check Mr. Derek Carey and his Astro Radio Z podcast. So, yes, I love Dead Silence as well. This is a fun movie. I watched it for 31 Days of Horror was the first time I watched it a while back. It was always on my list, and I'm like, okay, I'll check it out, and I dug it. It's fun. Yeah. So now, before we get licensed to shill, yes, I have two people here, so we got a little competition going on. It's going to be a little bit of trivia. I know the episode's going a little long.
A little bit of trivia.
Just a little bit of trivia. So, Angelique, action movies, Oscar winners, or comedy classics?
Let's go comedy.
Comedy classics it is. All right. I haven't gone through all these cards yet, so I got to put them to use somehow. So, all right. So, all right, Ian, for you get to pick her number. Which one? 1 or 2?
2.
2. Okay. Oh, come on. Okay. What supernatural creatures are the main characters in What We Do in the Shadows? Okay.
Vampires.
There you go.
AKA
Okay.
Draculas.
I was a little worried. I was a little worried about that. Okay. So, Mr. Ian Simmons, what would you like? Comedy, Oscars, or action?
I'm going to make a mistake here and go with Oscars.
Ooh, that's always been a tough category for everyone. So let's see what we got here. Oscars. Oscar. Angelique, pick a number for him, 1 or 2.
Number 2.
You're picking the easy ones for each other. What was the first animated movie to be nominated for Best Picture?
Beauty and the Beast.
There you go. Okay. So now I'm going to pick the other one off of this list. Angelique, off of the comedy classics. What is the name of the fortune-telling machine in Big?
Zoltar.
Should we give it to her? That's not the full name.
Zoltar the Magnificent.
No, it's Zoltar Speaks.
I actually talked to a Zoltar machine in Myrtle Beach this summer.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah.
That's awesome. It's actually Zoltar Speaks. So.
Did you end up putting the moves on Elizabeth Perkins? After speaking to the Zoltar machine?
No.
Oh.
All right.
I always wanted to do that. Actually, we've got a request.
We do. We have Mr. Robert Infobaum is in the house. He asks if he can answer one. I know there's a little lag here, but all right, I'm going to give him an Oscar one. I'm going to give him the other one off of Mr. Ian's card here. Here we go. Big is a movie about statutory rape. The views
it truly
of Big.
I agree with Derek.
The views of Big by Mr. Derek Carey do not necessarily reflect the views of the spoiler room and the producer. Okay, Robert.
I stand with you, Derek.
Actually, I agree with him as well. I should retract that disclaimer because that's a creepy movie. Okay, Mr. Robert Infobaum, you get one, sir, and then I've got to get. It is true. It is very true. You get one, and then we go back to Mr. Ian Simmons to see if he gets the tiebreaker, if he gets to license the shill first. So, for Mr. Robert Infobaum, before winning an Academy Award in 2016, How many times was Leonardo DiCaprio nominated for an Oscar? We'll wait for the lag to catch up. I actually wanted to also finish up the cards so I didn't have to put them back in the box. So
Efficiency.
efficiency. We'll see if he Critters 3 doesn't count. Okay. that I think he got a Razzie for. So that I think he got a Razzie for. So we will see if Mr. Infobomb, you've got about 20 seconds, sir, and then we will
No
we'll let it
Googling.
hang out there. No Googling. Yeah. See, the internet makes that way too easy, possibly. Once. Close. Actually, he was nominated 5 times. 5 times before he actually won in 2016. So that I always found interesting. Mr. Ian Simmons, you get to possibly for the win of getting the license to shill. Comedy, action, or Oscars?
Comedy
it is. Here we go. Comedy. Angelique, 1 or 2? Which one should he answer?
Number 1.
Number 1. Whose appearance was enlarged with a fat suit and prosthetic makeup in Shallow Hal?
Oh, Gwyneth Paltrow.
There you go. Sorry, Angelique.
All's fair in
won,
spoiler room
so.
trivia.
All's fair in spoiler room trivia. And yes, Infobomb, again, apparently there is a bit of a lag. I apologize. But yeah, the answer was actually 5. So now, Ian, you won. So you get to be the first in line to license to shill. So the floor is yours.
I'm still trying to piece together all the movies that he was nominated for before he won. Anyway,
I think one of them was Gilbert Grape.
Probably Gilbert Grape.
Mm-hmm.
Departed.
Possibly Catch Me If You Can. And maybe Titanic, because that was the year of everything Titanic.
No one else needed to even show up when Titanic came out.
Pretty much. Okay, so my license to shill. I'm Ian Simmons. I run Kicking the Seat, which you can find at kickseat.com and or the Kicking the Seat YouTube channel, where I have interviews and roundtables and movie reviews. And in fact, you can check out, speaking of Mr. Mark, our most recent episode, which went up yesterday or 2 days ago, whenever you saw this. We talk about the Bruce Willis movie opening Friday, Gasoline Alley, or as we like to call it, Vaseline Alley, because we got screwed by this one, let me tell you. Check it out. If you like it, like and subscribe and all that. And, I'm usually here on Tuesday nights, which is going to be fun. Next week, I'm going to be traveling. So I'm going to be broadcasting, live streaming from an undisclosed location. This will be fun.
Ooh, mystery.
Nice.
So before 2016, where he won for The Revenant, it was What's Eating Gilbert Grape, but we were wrong on everything else. He was nominated for The Aviator. He was nominated for Blood Diamond, and he was nominated in Wolf of Wall Street.
Oh, Wolf of Wall Street was before The Departed.
I know,
before The Revenant,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, that surprised the hell out of me too. It was, Wolf of Wall Street is actually, prepare your arteries, 8 years old. Go figure already. Yeah, I know. So, Angelique, license to shill, the floor is yours, my friend.
Oh, well, mainly right now you can find me at monstersmadnessandmagic.com. I'm actually going to be attending the Cult Classic Convention this weekend in Bastrop, Texas. So if anybody's around there, look around. I'll be hanging out.
Is that for Monsters, Madness, and Magic?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. And I'm also actually putting the pedal to the floor on my personal project, Creatures of Appetite, book.
Ooh.
Examining the relationship between food and horror movies. So I'll be passing out self-addressed stamped envelopes and interview questions to all the talent there. So
nice.
Cool.
Yay,
That's
fun.
very cool. That sounds exciting. It really does. Derek Carey does advise don't eat the gummies.
Hey, you shut up. My gummies are delicious.
She brings her own gummies. What are you talking about? You don't eat other people's gummies. What the hell?
I'll give the recipe.
better
It's
than
very
that.
simple.
Yes. Yes, over at Triple M, they do wonderful interviews. Check their stuff out. And it's so great that you get to be part of that. Angelique, your stuff is great. Ian, your stuff is great. Mr. Derek Carey's stuff is great as well. And yeah, I think that's where we'll end it for the night.
And your stuff is great, Mark.
Wait, what? Yeah.
Your stuff is amazing. And Derek's stuff is amazing. Everybody's stuff is amazing. What are you talking about?
We have a very very fortunate group of talented folks. Yes. So thank you so much for listening to us ramble. Next month, the Movie Man's Maniac March. Yes, that's right. We will be doing movies with the word maniac in the title, and we are kicking it off with The Invisible Maniac. And then, yes, our horror of 1988 film for next month will be the Maniac Cop #1. So you want to stay tuned. We got some other interesting Maniac films, not what you might think, just because I wanted to be a little different. So they're going to be fun, interesting. I hope you've enjoyed these episodes. Welcome all our new listeners. Thank you for sticking with us, all our veteran listeners. And yeah, that's enough of that. I'm going to go, not watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022. So with that, we'll just say good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.